I'm Ava, a 27-year-old woman, and my husband John, who is 31, recently tied the knot after 4 years of being together and an 8-month engagement. Our story began when I was managing a bar where John was a regular. Initially, I declined his advances, but his persistence and the nudging of my co-workers, who found his efforts endearing, led me to give him a chance. John is genuinely wonderful. Kind, mature, financially stable, and always planning thoughtful dates. However, there's a complicated aspect to our relationship involving his mother, Sophia. Initially, I got along well with her. Sophia had her heart broken when John's father, James, cheated on her. They were college sweethearts, and his betrayal, followed by a divorce, left deep scars. James, despite his faults, remained an involved father to John, supporting him at school events and encouraging his independence. In contrast, Sophia became overly protective and strict with John, setting numerous restrictions on him like curfews, bans on dating, and even prohibiting him from joining school trips. These rules might sound excessive, but Sophia justified them by saying she was protecting John from the world, perhaps still affected by the past betrayal. John preferred his father's more relaxed approach, and as a teenager he struggled under his mother's rules, which led to constant conflicts about his lifestyle choices. Fast forward to our recent honeymoon plans, a surprising conflict arose. John secretly booked business class seats for himself and his mother, leaving me with an economy ticket. I confronted him in the lounge, surrounded by strangers, questioning why he would make such a decision without discussing it with me first. This incident highlighted the ongoing influence Sophia has in our life, raising questions about boundaries and respect in our marriage. Mila had struggled with fertility issues for years and had reluctantly come to terms with the possibility that she might never have a child of her own. This changed when she met James, who was already a father to a young boy named John. Mila quickly formed a close bond with John, becoming a maternal figure to him, much to his delight. However, this relationship was a source of tension for Sophia, John's biological mother. Sophia was fiercely protective and resistant to the idea of another woman playing a significant role in her son's life. She harboured intense jealousy and frequently argued with John, attempting to undermine Mila's presence by falsely claiming that James had been unfaithful during their marriage. These accusations were unfounded. Mila only entered James's life after his divorce. Sophia's refusal to accept the situation escalated, leading to her obstructing James's visitation rights. She filled John's weekends with disappointment by inventing reasons to prevent him from seeing his father, arguing the uncertainty of Mila's character and deeming her a stranger. As John grew older, the conflicts intensified, especially when it came to his education. At 19, having been accepted to 2 universities, John faced pressure from Sophia to attend a local university so she could maintain close contact. However, John preferred another institution that offered better resources for his intended field of study. After discussing his options with James, who encouraged him to follow his aspirations, regardless of Sophia's wishes, John decided to enroll at the university farther from home. This decision triggered a severe reaction from Sophia. She accused John of betrayal and threatened severe financial and emotional repercussions. In response, James stepped in to help John move out and start his university life independently, offering financial support and assurance against Sophia's threats. During college, John's relationship with his mother reached a standstill. Sophia's communication swung between apologetic and accusatory, causing John emotional turmoil. Despite missing his mother, John chose to maintain distance to protect his well-being. Meanwhile, James remained a constant in John's life, supporting him through his university years. The situation took a dramatic turn when Sophia attempted suicide, leading to her hospitalization and a subsequent diagnosis of bipolar disorder and depression. This crisis became a pivotal moment for John, who blamed himself for his mother's condition. He spent days by her hospital bed, wrestling with guilt and praying for her recovery. Following her release and ongoing treatment, John and Sophia slowly rebuilt their relationship. After graduating, John moved back to his hometown but chose to live independently, close enough to support his mother while maintaining his own space. This delicate balance allowed him to foster a healthier relationship with Sophia while continuing to grow personally and professionally. Living near his mother, John was just a phone call away should she need him, and she often did, leveraging his proximity since her crisis. John existed in a constant state of worry and obligation toward his mother, perceiving her as exceedingly delicate. Despite his own reservations, he felt compelled to heed her requests and advice, rooted in a deep-seated anxiety and guilt about her well-being. When I first learned about John's situation, I empathized deeply. His mother was regularly attending therapy and checkups, so I hoped she was on a path to improvement. However, upon meeting her, I noticed some unsettling behaviours. She made uncomfortable comments about my appearance and subtly undermined my relationship with John, hinting that he deserved someone better, or making inappropriate remarks about our future children's skin colour. At first, I tried to brush off these comments, not wanting to create conflict. As my relationship with John deepened, I observed the toll his mother's emotional dependency took on him. She would call him incessantly, ensuring he had eaten or demanding his immediate attention, claiming ill health. If John missed her calls, she would persist until he answered. After I moved in with John, she even started calling me to inquire why John was unreachable, suggesting I was keeping him from her. John's adherence to his mother's demands often disrupted our plans. He would cancel dates or leave events abruptly to tend to her. If he received recognition at work, she insisted on being his plus one, sidelining me. She demanded constant updates on our whereabouts, especially during vacations, claiming it helped her sleep at night. All these dynamics made me uneasy and highlighted John's struggle between his desire for a normal life and his obligation to his mother. Contrastingly, John's father, James, and his wife, Mila, were a breath of fresh air. They were always welcoming and respectful, never prying into our lives unnecessarily. James's genuine interest in me without any judgment was refreshing. It was clear that John had inherited some of James's admirable traits, which reinforced why I chose to stay by John's side through the challenges. I recognized that John needed support, perhaps even therapy, to navigate his complex relationship with his mother. While he insisted he was okay, I encouraged open communication, hoping he would eventually acknowledge his need for professional guidance. When John proposed to me, it was a joyous surprise that became one of the happiest days of my life. He had arranged for my parents and best friend to fly in for the occasion, ensuring they were part of our special day. James and Mila were also there, offering heartfelt congratulations. The only absence was Sophia, and while her non-presence was felt, John explained the situation. Through all this, I understood more deeply the intricate dynamics of John's familial relationships and the emotional burden he carried. I remained committed, hoping together we could build a future that balanced his obligations with our collective happiness. Sophia was reportedly unwell on the day John proposed to me, and while it may sound harsh, I felt relieved that she wasn't there to potentially make awkward comments in front of my parents. We were celebrating when John received a distressing call from the hospital about Sophia having a fall. Naturally, we all rushed to be with her, but once there, Sophia insisted that only John could see her, leaving the rest of us waiting outside. This seemed unusual, especially since we had all come to support her, but it didn't seem appropriate to question it at the time. John later emerged to tell us that Sophia had a fracture and needed to stay in the hospital overnight. She requested that John stay with her. James, trying to be helpful, offered to stay instead, suggesting John go home with me. However, John declined, worried about upsetting his mother further. As a result, we returned home, and my parents and best friend, who had intended to stay in hotel rooms, ended up spending the night at my place, supporting me through my disappointment. This episode should have been an early warning of the challenges ahead. As we began planning our wedding, Sophia's influence was pervasive. She had opinions on everything, from my wedding dress to the guest list, and even the suit John should wear. Her presence felt overbearing, affecting every detail of our preparations. John and I had dreamed of honeymooning in Hawaii, but Sophia pushed for a closer destination, claiming a distant trip was unnecessary. Finally, I stood my ground, explaining firmly yet respectfully that the honeymoon was our decision. Sophia reacted poorly, accusing me of disrespect and exclusion. Her response was tearful, painting herself as a victim being pushed away by my actions. Despite my efforts to accommodate her wishes throughout the wedding planning, I was adamant about our honeymoon. Feeling torn, John tried to mediate, but Sophia positioned herself as a martyr, sacrificing her relationship with her son. In a bid to smooth things over, I texted her an apology, acknowledging her importance to John. However, her reply was dismissive, insisting that no woman could replace her in John's life and that I should learn my place. I showed John the message, prompting him to confront his mother. Yet, she accused me of sowing discord and insisted that John should always trust her above anyone else. This situation became increasingly uncomfortable for me, and I began to realize just how complex and strained the dynamics were in John's family. It was clear that navigating this relationship would require careful consideration and perhaps more boundaries to ensure our future happiness together. After John's phone call with his mother, he reassured me that we would stick to our original honeymoon plan in Hawaii, which lifted my spirits. It felt like John was finally asserting himself against his mother's influence, allowing us to enjoy our special time together. Our wedding proceeded beautifully, and despite Sophia making a speech that centered largely on her own sacrifices, I chose to focus on the joyous aspects of the day. Everyone, including my parents, James, Mila, and the rest of our guests, enjoyed the celebration, and we spent the night dancing and reveling in our new beginning. The morning of our departure for Hawaii, I woke up filled with excitement. John and I prepared eagerly for the airport, but upon arriving, I was stunned to learn that John had booked himself into business class while I was in economy. This was a complete surprise, as I would have gladly paid for both of us to travel in business class, and John had taken it upon himself to arrange the entire trip, so I had assumed we would be seated together. When I confronted him, John mentioned he had snagged a last-minute deal on his seat, but couldn't find another in business class for me. His avoidance of eye contact and dismissive attitude raised my suspicions. He insisted it wasn't a big deal and suggested I was being overly sensitive. Frustrated and hurt, I proposed switching seats, arguing that if it truly wasn't a big deal, he could travel in economy. This suggestion irritated him further, and he left for the business class lounge, leaving me to wait alone. Trying to keep my composure and not wanting to start our honeymoon on a negative note, I freshened up and settled in the waiting area, though John continued to ignore my calls. My unease grew until I received an unexpected call from Sophia. She began questioning my whereabouts in a way that seemed more intrusive than casual curiosity. Frustrated by the day's events and Sophia's probing, I confronted her directly, asking what she wanted. With a taunting tone, Sophia revealed that she was also coming on our honeymoon. I was astonished and upset by her announcement, feeling my anger boil over. I cut the call short and headed to the business class lounge to confront John. After some persistence, security allowed me inside, where I found John casually scrolling through his phone, clearly having ignored my earlier attempts to contact him. Surprised to see me with security, John immediately sensed something was amiss. I asked him directly if it was true that Sophia was joining us on our honeymoon trip. His shocked expression confirmed my fears. I questioned him about the separate ticket, suspecting that it was part of a plan to accommodate his mother's sudden inclusion in our plans. This confrontation marked a critical moment in our relationship, as it underscored the ongoing struggle between his loyalty to his mother and his commitment to our marriage. It was clear that setting boundaries with Sophia would be crucial if we were to navigate our future together without continual overreach into our personal lives. When John and I reached the airport lounge, the situation escalated quickly. John had booked business class for himself while placing me in economy, a detail he had kept hidden. As we discussed this disparity, Sophia entered, visibly searching for John. Seeing us together, she froze. John explained that he had initially booked economy seats just for us, but Sophia's tears and pleas led him to book her on the same flight without my knowledge. He claimed he had arranged a separate hotel for Sophia, ensuring she wouldn't intrude on our honeymoon. Despite his reassurances, the situation was far from acceptable. Sophia approached and began justifying her inclusion on our trip, praising John's devotion to her. My patience shattered. If it weren't for the public setting of the airport, I might have lost complete control. Instead, I loudly expressed my frustration to John, embarrassed to be married to someone who seemed incapable of independence from his mother. John, concerned with the opinions of onlookers, suggested we postpone our discussion until Hawaii. I countered sarcastically, suggesting he enjoy the trip with his mommy, since our marriage seemed a farce. Stunned, Sophia and John watched as I tore up my tickets and arranged a cab home. John chose not to go on the honeymoon either, and returned home, where he criticised my reaction, defending his decisions. Distraught, I locked myself away to cry, unable to face him. The incident left our marriage in ruins. The next few days were a haze of pain and confusion. I turned to an online community for support, where I shared my story. The overwhelming response encouraged me to have one final talk with John. If he continued siding with his mother, our marriage would be untenable. Sophia's choice to travel alone to Hawaii, knowing the chaos she had caused, only solidified her disregard for our relationship. A month later, after processing the advice from countless strangers online, I decided it was time for a decisive conversation with John. I prepared for this talk, knowing it could either mend or end our marriage. When John arrived home and saw me waiting, a mix of surprise and worry crossed his face. I invited him to sit and offered him a glass of water. The tension was palpable as we prepared to address the issues that could redefine our future together. Since the incident, John and I hadn't been communicating much because he felt that I owed him an apology. However, taking a deep breath, I decided it was time to open up about everything, starting from the very beginning of our relationship. I shared how his mother's presence had always made me uncomfortable, and how John's demeanour seemed to change when she was around. He would transform into a completely different person, one I barely recognised. I expressed the immense guilt he seemed to carry, influenced by his mother's constant reminders of the sacrifices she had made for him, and how this was chipping away at the foundation of our relationship. Tears welled up in my eyes as I recounted the constant interference by his mother, not just in our wedding plans, but also in our honeymoon. I told him that while I had fallen in love with his kindness and sweetness, the dynamic with his mother was eroding what we had built together. As I poured out my emotions, I saw that John too had tears streaming down his face. It was shocking to see him break down. He admitted that he hadn't realised how deeply this was affecting me since the beginning of our relationship. John confessed that he had become so accustomed to taking care of his mother, always living in fear that something bad might happen to her. His tears flowed as he described the constant internal struggle he faced, having been conditioned to prioritise her needs above everything and everyone else. He explained that he knew bringing his mother on our honeymoon was wrong, but he had caved under her guilt-tripping, thinking it would just keep the peace. I pointed out that if his mother truly wanted to be close to him, she wouldn't have gone to Hawaii after causing such turmoil. John nodded, acknowledging that he had been blind to her manipulations until now. The weight of his emotions was palpable as he knelt down, apologising repeatedly. This broke my heart, and I hugged him, realising the immense suffering he had endured. It became clear that John needed counselling, and I was ready to support him through this marriage, as long as he was willing to work on these issues. In the following 3 weeks, John made an appointment and began seeing a behavioural therapist. He also had a heartfelt conversation with his father, James, who was unaware of the incident. James was taken aback that Sophia had caused so much distress and echoed my sentiments, advising John that it was time for him to live his life unapologetically. With the guidance of his behavioural therapist, John decided to go low contact with his mother, recognising the need for space to sort out his own thoughts. This was going to be a difficult decision since his mother kept calling him incessantly. He hadn't told her about seeing a behavioural therapist, fearing her reaction, but he planned to tell her that weekend to give him the space he needed. If she refused, he was prepared to block her to safeguard his mental health. Overall, while the journey was fraught with challenges, I felt a glimmer of hope that John was finally taking steps to assert his independence and prioritise our marriage. This has been a significant turning point and the right step towards healing our relationship. The journey hasn't been easy, but for the first time, it feels like we're moving in the right direction. 5 months have passed since my last update, and I want to express my gratitude to everyone who has followed my story and offered support. It's been a roller coaster of emotions, and your encouragement has been invaluable. John did have that difficult conversation with his mother after consulting with his behavioural therapist. As expected, it didn't go smoothly. She unleashed a barrage of accusations, screaming and yelling at him, blaming me for distancing him from her. She even insisted that he should divorce me, claiming that I was the reason for their strained relationship and that they were much happier before I came into the picture. However, John finally stood his ground. He firmly told her that he would no longer tolerate her manipulative behaviour and made it clear that she needed to respect our relationship and boundaries. Following this, John took a decisive step. He blocked his mother's number. I did the same. This move was necessary for the health of our relationship and our personal sanity. Naturally, his mother began to vent to anyone who would listen, complaining about being abandoned by her son and portraying herself as a victim. The gossip and rumours inevitably reached us through various acquaintances and family members, but we stayed strong and focused on our happiness. During this time, James, John's father, has been instrumental. He occasionally checks up on John's mother, ensuring she is okay and taking her medications regularly. Since cutting ties with his mother, John has shown a noticeable improvement in his emotional well-being. The cloud of anxiety and guilt that lingered over him has dissipated. We've started going out for date nights again, now without the constant interruption of his mother's calls. This has allowed us to truly enjoy each other's company. Regarding our honeymoon, John wanted to make things right and surprised me with a new trip to Hawaii. This time, both of us flying business class together. It was the peaceful and romantic getaway we had envisioned, a wonderful vacation that helped to strengthen our bond and create positive memories together. Overall, I feel a renewed sense of happiness and optimism for our future. The growth and commitment my husband has shown to our relationship have been clearly evident. If there are further developments, I'll be sure to update you all. Thank you once again for your support and kindness throughout this challenging time.